What would you do if you lost everything overnight? No home, no support, nowhere to go. This is the story of Linda Carver, a homeless single mother who was cast out, abandoned, and left to survive in the freezing wilderness. But what happened next, no one saw coming. Because instead of giving up, she disappeared. And deep beneath the ground, she built a hidden underground home, a secret life no one could find and no one could destroy. Stay with me, because this story might change the way you see survival, strength, and what it really means to start over. The night Linda Carver lost everything. It didn't come with thunder or warning, just silence. The kind of silence that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. She was 47, a single mother, the kind of woman who never asked for help, even when her hands were cracked from years of scrubbing floors and lifting boxes at jobs no one else wanted. In a forgotten corner of Montana, where winters linger too long and people remember your mistakes longer than your kindness. That's where Linda tried to build a life for her daughter, Emily. But small towns can turn cold faster than the weather. All it took was one misunderstanding. A legal notice she didn't fully understand. A rumor that spread faster than truth ever could, and suddenly, the same people who once waved at her from their porches closed their doors. She was given days, just days, to leave. I still remember the image Linda standing on the roadside, a single duffel bag at her feet. Her daughter's hand clutched tightly in hers. No home, no plan, just fear, and a quiet promise in her eyes. I will not let this break us. And yet, at that moment, she had no idea how close she was to disappearing completely. That night, the cold didn't just bite it, clung. It wrapped itself around Linda and her daughter like something alive, slipping through the thin layers of clothing they had left. The kind of cold that doesn't stay on your skin, it settles into your bones, slow and merciless. They had been walking for hours. No destination, no map, just the faint hope that somewhere, anywhere, there might be a place to rest. Emily's small hand was trembling in Linda's grip, her steps growing slower, heavier with every passing minute. "Mom, I'm tired," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind weaving through the trees. Linda swallowed hard. Every instinct in her screamed to stop, to hold her daughter close and promise warmth, safety, something. But she couldn't lie, not tonight. "I know, sweetheart," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's frozen cheek. "Just a little further. Okay, we'll find something." But the truth, she had no idea where they were going. The road they had followed had long since disappeared, replaced by uneven ground and dense forest. Tall pines loomed overhead, their branches creaking like quiet warnings. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, leaving them with only shadows and the sound of their own breathing. Step after step, hope after hope, fading. Until suddenly, Linda's foot slipped. She stumbled forward, catching herself against a jagged wall of stone. Her breath hitched as her palm pressed against something cold, solid, unnatural. A rock face. She blinked, squinting through the darkness. Something about it felt different. Not just a cliff, not just random stone. There was a gap, narrow, almost invisible unless you were standing right in front of it. "Wait," she murmured, her voice cautious now. Emily clutched her arm tighter. "What is it?" Linda didn't answer right away. She stepped closer, her fingers tracing the edge of the opening. The wind shifted slightly, and for a brief second, she felt something unexpected. Not colder, warmer. A faint breath of air, coming from inside. Her heart skipped. An opening like this, out here. It didn't make sense, but then again, nothing about this night did. She crouched slightly, peering into the darkness. It swallowed the little light there was, stretching inward like a silent invitation or a warning. Every story she had ever heard about places like this rushed into her mind at once. Collapsed tunnels, wild animals, people who went in and never came out. Her instincts told her to turn around, to keep walking, to stay where it was at least known, even if it was dangerous. But then she looked down at Emily. Her daughter's lips were pale, her shoulders trembling, eyes wide not just from fear, but from exhaustion so deep it bordered on surrender. And in that moment, something inside Linda shifted. Fear didn't disappear. It simply moved aside. "I think," Linda began slowly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her chest. "I think this might be a place we can rest." Emily looked at the dark opening, uncertainty flickering across her face. Inside there, Linda hesitated. She could lie, say it was safe, say everything would be okay. But instead, she did something harder. She told the truth. "I don't know what's in there," she admitted quietly, "but I do know we can't stay out here tonight." The wind howled again, sharper this time as if to prove her point. For a long second, neither of them moved. Then Emily tightened her grip on Linda's hand and nodded. That was all it took. Linda took a slow breath, steadying herself. Then, with nothing but instinct and desperation guiding her, she stepped forward, pulling her daughter gently with her, into the dark. The temperature shifted almost immediately. Not warm, but calmer. The wind vanished, replaced by a deep, echoing silence that felt almost surreal after the chaos outside. Their footsteps sounded louder here, each one bouncing faintly off unseen walls. Linda reached out, her hand brushing against rough stone as she moved slowly, carefully. Every sense was on edge. Listening, waiting. But as her eyes began to adjust, shapes started to form. The narrow entrance opened into a wider passage. The ceiling rose higher. The ground, though uneven, was more stable than the forest floor outside. And then, she heard it. A sound so soft at first she almost thought she imagined it. Drip. 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 Water. Somewhere deeper inside. Linda froze, her breath catching. Water meant something. It meant this place wasn't completely dead. It meant survival might be possible. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Emily nodded slowly, her fear now mixed with something new curiosity. Linda turned her head, looking further into the darkness ahead. She didn't know what they would find. She didn't know how deep this place went, or what it might demand from them. But for the first time since everything fell apart, she felt something she hadn't dared to feel before. Not safety, not certainty, but a chance. And sometimes, when you've lost everything, a chance is enough. So she tightened her grip on her daughter's hand and took another step forward, deeper into the unknown, not realizing this wasn't just a place to survive the night. It was the beginning of a life no one would ever expect. At first, Linda thought the tunnel would end quickly. A few yards in, maybe a small hollow space just enough to shield them from the wind. That's all she had hoped for. Nothing more. But the deeper they walked, the more the darkness began to change. It wasn't closing in on them. It was opening up. The narrow passage slowly widened, the ceiling lifting higher above their heads, their footsteps, once muffled and cautious, now echoed soft at first, then louder. stretching into the unseen distance like whispers bouncing off forgotten walls. But Linda stopped. Something about this didn't feel like a natural cave anymore. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice instinctively lower now, as if afraid of disturbing something ancient. Emily nodded, pressing closer to her side. They took a few more steps, and then they saw it. The tunnel didn't just continue, it split. One path curved to the left, disappearing behind a jagged wall of stone. Another sloped gently downward, where the faint sound of dripping water grew clearer. And straight ahead, there was space, a large open chamber. Linda's breath caught as she stepped forward, her eyes slowly adjusting to the dim, gray light filtering faintly from cracks far above. It was enormous, not just a cave, a room. No rooms. Shapes began to form as her vision settled. Uneven walls, yes, but too structured to be random. Sections of the chamber were divided, almost like crude living spaces carved out with intention. "Mom," Emily whispered, her voice trembling not just from fear now, but from awe. "I see it," Linda replied, barely able to believe her own eyes. They moved further in, and that's when the details began to reveal themselves. Against one wall, rusted metal frames leaned at awkward angles, what looked like the remains of old bunk beds. Nearby, scattered pieces of wood, long rotted but still recognizable, hinted at shelves or makeshift tables. This wasn't just a cave someone had passed through. People had lived here, a long time ago. Linda knelt slowly, brushing her fingers over the ground. Dust, debris. But beneath it, something solid, flattened areas, worn down over time like paths that had once been walked over and over again. Her heart started to pound. "Who would live down here?" Emily asked softly. Linda didn't answer, because she was starting to realize the truth. Miners. The workers. People who had come down here not just to dig, but to survive. And somehow, they had made it work. A sudden sound broke the silence. Drip. 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 Louder now. More consistent. Linda turned her head toward the sloping path they had seen earlier. "Come on," she said gently, taking Emily's hand again. They followed the sound. Step by step, the air grew slightly cooler, but fresher somehow. Less stale. The tunnel narrowed briefly before opening again into a smaller chamber. And there, Linda froze. A thin stream of water trickled along the rock, winding its way across the floor before disappearing into a crack further down. It wasn't much, but it was steady, alive. Emily's eyes widened. "Is that water?" Linda stepped closer, crouching beside it. She reached out, hesitating only for a moment before letting her fingers touch the Jurayan. Cold. Clear. Real. Her throat tightened. Water meant life. Water meant they didn't have to go back out there. Not immediately. For a moment, she just stared at it, her hand still resting in the shallow Jurayan as if afraid it might disappear. "This," she whispered, more to herself than to Emily. "This changes everything." Emily looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Linda stood slowly, her eyes scanning the chamber again, but this time, she wasn't seeing darkness. She was seeing possibility. The larger room behind them, the old structures, the sheltered space, and now water. Her mind began to race. They could stay here, at least for a while, out of the wind, hidden, safe. The thought was terrifying, but also undeniable. She walked back into the main chamber, turning slowly in place as if seeing it for the first time all over again. "This place," she murmured. Her voice filled with something new, something Emily hadn't heard in days. Hope. It's not just a tunnel, Linda said, louder now, her thoughts forming into something clearer. It's a shelter. Emily tilted her head. You mean like a home? The word hung in the air. Home. Linda swallowed hard. Could she really think that? After everything they had lost. After being pushed out, erased, left with nothing. And yet, she looked around again. The walls didn't feel as threatening now. The darkness didn't feel as deep. Because for the first time since they had stepped inside, she wasn't looking at what was missing. She was looking at what was possible. It could be, she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. If we're careful, if we figure things out. Emily's grip on her hand tightened. You mean we can stay? Linda looked down at her daughter, really looked, at the exhaustion in her eyes, the fear she had tried so hard to hide, and beneath it all, a fragile hope that refused to disappear. Linda took a deep breath. I don't know how long, she admitted, but maybe long enough. A silence followed, not empty this time. Different. Heavier, but warmer, because something had shifted. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. Linda turned back toward the dark corridors branching out beyond the chamber. There was still so much she didn't know. How deep it went. What dangers might be hiding. Whether this place could truly sustain them. But one thing was certain. They weren't just lost anymore. They had found something. Something hidden. Something forgotten. Something that against all odds might just give them a second chance. And as Linda stood there, in the quiet heart of the earth, she made a decision she couldn't yet fully understand. She wasn't going back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. At first, Linda didn't think about tomorrow. She couldn't afford to. Every thought, every breath, every step, it was all about getting through the next hour. Finding a dry place to sit. Making sure Emily could rest. Listening for any sound that didn't belong. That was survival. Nothing more. She found a corner in the larger chamber, tucked between two rough stone walls that blocked most of the draft. It wasn't comfortable. The ground was hard, uneven, unforgiving, but it was better than the forest outside. Sit here, Linda whispered, guiding Emily down gently. Her daughter didn't argue. She was too tired for that. She curled into herself, pulling her knees close to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them as if trying to hold on to whatever warmth she had left. Linda took off her jacket, thin as it was, and draped it over Emily's shoulders. What about you? Emily asked softly. Linda forced a small smile. I'll be okay. It wasn't true, but mothers, they learn how to lie in ways that sound like comfort. For a while, neither of them spoke. The cave was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no voices, just the occasional drip of water echoing faintly in the distance. Time felt suspended, like the world above had simply stopped existing. Linda leaned back against the stone wall, her body aching in places she didn't even know could hurt. Her hands trembled slightly, though, whether from cold or exhaustion, she couldn't tell anymore. She closed her eyes just for a moment, but the silence didn't bring peace. It brought memories. The house, the arguments, the looks from neighbors who used to smile, now filled with judgment. The moment she realized no one was coming to help, her chest tightened. For a brief second, she felt it. That overwhelming wave of defeat. How did it come to this? A life reduced to a cave. A future completely unknown. Her breathing grew heavier, uneven. The weight of everything pressed down on her all at once. And then, A small sound pulled her back. "Mom." Linda opened her eyes instantly. Emily hadn't moved much, but her body was trembling again more noticeably now. Her face was pale, her eyes glossy in the dim light. "I'm cold," she whispered, not complaining, not crying, just stating it. And somehow, that made it worse. Linda sat up quickly, pulling Emily closer, wrapping her arms around her as tightly as she could. "I've got you," she murmured, pressing her cheek against her daughter's head. "I've got you." But as she held her, she felt it. Not just the cold, not just the fear, as something deeper, as something heavier. Emily wasn't just cold. She was scared. Scared in a way children shouldn't have to be. Scared of not knowing where they'd sleep tomorrow. Scared of whether her mother could keep her safe. And in that moment, Linda realized something that hit harder than anything else that night. This wasn't just about surviving anymore, because surviving like this, it would slowly break them. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually it would. Linda pulled back slightly, looking into Emily's eyes, and for the first time since everything fell apart, she saw it clearly. If she kept thinking like this, if she kept running, hiding, waiting for things to somehow get better, they wouldn't make it. Not really. They would exist, but they wouldn't live, and that thought, that was unacceptable. Something inside Linda shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, like a door closing, and another one opening at the same time. She looked around the cave again. The same walls, the same darkness, the same silence. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Because now, she wasn't looking at it through fear. She was looking at it through responsibility, through determination, through something stronger than both. Her daughter needed more than a place to hide. She needed a home. Even if that home was here. Linda took a slow breath, her mind beginning to move in a different direction now. The chamber was large enough. The ground, if cleared, could be leveled. There was water nearby, and the entrance hidden from the world that had turned its back on them. A strange thought crossed her mind. Out there, they had nothing. No protection, no control, no voice. But in here, no one could touch them. No one could judge them. No one could take anything away, because there was nothing left to take, except this space, this hidden, forgotten place beneath the earth. Linda tightened her arms around Emily slightly. "We're going to be okay," she said softly. This time, it wasn't a lie. Emily looked up at her, searching her face. "You promise?" Linda hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Then she nodded. "I promise." And in that moment, she meant it. Not because she suddenly had all the answers, but because something inside her had changed. She wasn't waiting anymore. She wasn't hoping for rescue. She wasn't running. She was choosing to stay, choosing to fight, choosing to build something out of nothing. Linda gently helped Emily lie down, tucking the jacket more securely around her. Within minutes, exhaustion took over, and her daughter drifted into a restless but much-needed sleep. Linda, however, stayed awake, sitting there in the dim silence, her back against the cold stone, her eyes scanning every corner of the chamber. But now she wasn't afraid of the dark. She was studying it, measuring it, understanding it. Because this place, the one she had feared just hours ago, was no longer just a cave. It was a beginning, a place no one expected, a place no one controlled, a place where, for the first time in a long time, Linda Carver could decide what came next. And she made that decision, right there, in the quiet heart of the earth. She would stop surviving and start rebuilding. The next morning didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt heavy, cold, uncertain. But for Linda, something had already changed. She didn't wake up asking, "What now?" She woke up asking, "Where do I start?" Emily was still asleep, curled up beneath the thin jacket, her breathing soft but uneven. Linda watched her for a moment, memorizing the fragile peace on her face. Then, quietly, she stood up. The cave greeted her with the same silence as before. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt unfinished. Linda stepped carefully across the uneven ground, her eyes scanning every corner with a new kind of focus. She wasn't just seeing rocks and shadows anymore. She was seeing potential. The first problem was obvious: water. She made her way back to the narrow stream they had found the night before. Kneeling beside it, she cupped her hands again, letting the cold liquid run through her fingers. It looked clean, but she knew better. Clear doesn't mean safe. She whispered to herself something she had learned years ago, long before life brought her here. She looked around. Rocks, small debris, pieces of rusted metal, and then a thought. Improvised filtration. It wouldn't be perfect, but it could be enough. Linda spent hours that morning gathering what she could. Flat stones, layers of sand-like sediment from the cave floor, bits of cloth from an old bag she had nearly thrown away. Piece by piece, she built something simple, a layered filter. Crude, fragile, but when she poured the water through it and caught it again on the other side, she saw the difference. It wasn't just water anymore. It was survival. By the time Emily woke up, Linda was sitting beside her, holding out a small container. "Drink slowly," she said gently. Emily hesitated, then took a sip. Her eyes widened slightly. "It's cold," she whispered. Linda smiled faintly. "That's a good thing." And just like that, the first piece of their new life was in place. The days that followed blurred together, but not in the way hardship usually does. There was purpose now. Each day had a goal, each hour a task. Linda began clearing the main chamber, pushing aside loose rocks, flattening sections of the ground as best she could. It was exhausting work. Her hands grew raw. Her back ached constantly, but she didn't stop, because every inch she cleared felt like taking something back. She designated spaces, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. "This will be where we sleep," she told Emily one afternoon, marking off a corner near the wall where the draft was weakest. "And over there," she pointed toward a slightly raised area, "that's where we'll keep things dry." Emily watched her, something new in her expression. Not fear, not confusion, but trust. "What about food?" Emily asked quietly. Linda paused. That part was harder, but she didn't let it show. "We'll figure it out," she said. And they did. Carefully, slowly. Linda began venturing just outside the entrance during the day, never too far, always marking her path. She searched for anything useful, discarded items, branches, even scraps left behind near the outskirts of town. Things people threw away became treasures. A broken container became storage. A piece of plastic became insulation. A rusted can became a tool. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was overlooked. And with each small addition, the cave changed. Days turned into a rhythm. Morning water, clearing, organizing. Afternoon gathering, adjusting, building. Night rest, and quiet conversations in the dim glow of a small, controlled flame Linda had carefully learned to manage. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the cold crept back in, moments when the silence felt too heavy, times when Linda questioned everything. But then she would look at Emily, sleeping more peacefully now, eating, even if it wasn't much, laughing sometimes, and that was enough to keep going. One evening, as Linda stepped back to look at the space they had shaped, she barely recognized it. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was theirs. A sleeping area, a place for water, a small section for food and supplies, paths cleared between them, structure where there had once been chaos. Emily stood beside her, her small hand slipping into Linda's. "It feels different," she said softly. Linda nodded. "Yeah, it does. It feels—" Emily hesitated, searching for the right word. "Safe." Linda's throat tightened. "Safe!" That word had felt so far away, not long ago, and yet here it was. Not given, not handed to them, but built piece by piece, with cold hands, with tired bodies, with a kind of strength Linda didn't even know she had. She looked around one more time, at the walls that no longer felt threatening, at the darkness that now held warmth, at the space that had become something no one on the surface could understand. A hidden home, a second life, a place no one could take from them. Linda exhaled slowly, and for the first time since she had lost everything, she didn't feel like she was starting over. She felt like she was finally beginning. Time has a strange way of changing people, not all at once, not in loud, dramatic moments, but slowly, quietly, in the spaces between exhaustion and persistence. That's where Linda Carver began to change. At first, everything she built was out of necessity. Water, shelter, warmth. But as the days turned into weeks, something deeper began to take root. Routine, discipline, control. She woke up before Emily most mornings now, moving through the cave with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Her steps were no longer hesitant, her hands no longer unsure. She knew this place, every corner, every shadow, every sound, and more importantly, she knew herself. "Mom, you're different," Emily said one evening, watching her as she adjusted a small storage area they had created from stacked containers. Linda paused. "Different how?" Emily shrugged slightly. "You don't look scared anymore." The words lingered. Linda didn't answer right away, because the truth was, Emily was right. The fear hadn't disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled her. "I guess," Linda said softly, "I just stopped waiting for things to get better." Emily tilted her head. "So what did you do?" Linda looked around the cave, their cave. "I started making them better. But growth never comes without challenge. And sometimes it comes with something unexpected." It happened late one night. The fire had burned low, casting long, flickering shadows against the walls. Emily was already asleep, curled up in their small sleeping area. Linda sat quietly, listening. It had become a habit to listen, because underground sound mattered. Every drip, every shift, every echo. And that's when she heard it. A noise that didn't belong. Not water, not wind, not the natural settling of stone. This was different. A faint, metallic scrape. Linda froze. Her entire body went still, every sense sharpening instantly. Scrape, then silence. Her heart began to pound. Slow, heavy, deliberate. She stood up carefully. Her movements controlled, silent. Her eyes moved toward the darker tunnel beyond the main chamber, the one they hadn't fully explored yet. Another sound. Closer this time. Not loud, but unmistakable. Someone, or something, was in there. Linda's first instinct was fear. Raw, immediate, the kind that tells you to run, to hide, protect. Her gaze flicked toward Emily, still asleep, still unaware, and in that moment, fear tried to take over again. But something else rose with it, something stronger. She didn't panic, she didn't freeze. She reached for the closest thing she could use, an old metal rod she had kept near their supplies. Her grip tightened around it. Not perfect, not safe, but enough. Step by step, Linda moved toward the sound. Her breathing slow, controlled, every movement deliberate. The darkness ahead felt thicker now, heavier, as if it were hiding something. Scrape! There it was again, just beyond the bend. Linda swallowed, her grip tightening. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice low but steady. The sound stopped. Silence. Total silence. For a moment, she thought maybe she imagined it. That exhaustion had finally caught up to her, but then a faint shift, and something moved in the shadows. Linda's heart slammed against her chest. She raised the metal rod slightly, bracing herself, but as the figure stepped forward into the faint light, she froze. It wasn't what she expected. Not a threat, not danger, just a man. Thin, disheveled, eyes wide with the same fear she had felt weeks ago. He looked just as shocked to see her. Neither of them spoke. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Two strangers, both hiding beneath the same world, both trying to survive. "I didn't know anyone else was here," he said finally, his voice rough, cautious. Linda didn't lower the rod. Neither did I. Another silence. Tense, uncertain. Then the man glanced around, taking in the space behind her, the organized supplies, the sleeping area, the structure. His expression shifted. Not threatening, not aggressive, but something else. "Respect? You built all this?" he asked quietly. Linda hesitated, then nodded. The man exhaled slowly, almost in disbelief. "I've been moving through these tunnels for days, hiding. I didn't think—" He trailed off. Linda studied him carefully. He wasn't dangerous. Not right now. Just lost, like she had been. Behind her, Emily stirred slightly. Linda glanced back instinctively, and in that moment, her decision was made. She turned back to the man. "You can't go further in," she said firmly. "This is our space." The man nodded quickly. "I understand." A pause. Then, more quietly, "I'm not here to take anything." Linda held his gaze, measuring, thinking. This place had protected them, hidden them, given them a second chance. But now, it was no longer just theirs. And that changed everything. That night, Linda didn't sleep. Not fully. But she didn't feel the same fear she once would have. Because this time, she wasn't helpless. She wasn't lost. She wasn't the woman standing on the roadside with nowhere to go. She was the woman who had built something. From nothing. And now, she would have to protect it. Adapt again. Grow again. Because survival had turned into strength. And strength was about to be tested in ways she never expected. Morning came quietly, as it always did underground. No sunrise. No golden light breaking through windows. Just a slow shift in the air. A subtle awareness that another day had begun. Linda sat near the entrance of their chamber. Her eyes fixed on the narrow passage that led deeper into the tunnels, the place where everything had changed the night before. The stranger. The reminder that even here, in the one place she thought was hidden from the world. Nothing stayed the same forever. Behind her, Emily was still asleep, peaceful, safe, and that was all that mattered. The man hadn't come back into their space. Not yet. He had kept his distance, just as Linda demanded. But his presence lingered, a quiet tension beneath everything, a question that hadn't been answered. What now? Linda exhaled slowly, rubbing her hands together for warmth. Weeks ago, a moment like this would have broken her. Another unknown, another risk, another thing she couldn't control. But now, she didn't feel fear the same way. She felt clarity. Later that day, she found him again. Not by accident, by choice. He was sitting near one of the smaller tunnels, his back against the stone, his posture guarded but not aggressive. When he saw her, he straightened slightly, ready, but not threatening. "I said you could stay out there," Linda began, her voice calm but firm. "I didn't say you had to hide." The man gave a faint, tired smile. "Old habits," he said. Linda studied him for a moment. "You have a name." He hesitated. "Daniel." She nodded once. "Linda." A pause. Then something shifted. Not trust. Not yet, but understanding. "I wasn't always down here," Daniel said after a while, his voice quieter now. "Lost my job, fell behind. Same story, I guess." Linda didn't respond immediately, because she knew that story. She had lived it. Different details. Same ending. "You planning to stay?" she asked. Daniel shrugged slightly. "Didn't think I had a choice." Linda looked around the tunnel, at the darkness, at the emptiness, then back at him. "There's always a choice," she said softly. He met her eyes, confused. "You just don't always like the options." That night, Linda sat beside Emily again, watching her sleep. Her daughter looked stronger now, not just physically. There was something in her expression, even in rest, a quiet resilience, a reflection of everything they had been through. Linda reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're going to have a different life," she whispered. Not the one she had planned, not the one she had hoped for, but maybe something stronger. Days passed, and something unexpected began to happen. The cave changed again, not in structure, but in feeling. Daniel kept his distance at first, then slowly, he helped, without asking, fixing small things, reinforcing weak spots, sharing what little he knew about the deeper tunnels. Linda didn't fully trust him, but she didn't push him away either, because she understood something now. Survival didn't always mean being alone. One evening, as the small fire flickered between them, Emily looked up at Linda and asked a question that seemed simple, but carried everything. "Mom, are we still homeless?" Linda froze. The word hit differently now. Homeless, a label the world had given them, a definition built on loss. She looked around, at the space they had built, at the walls that had protected them, at the life they had created from nothing. Then she looked back at her daughter, and for the first time, she smiled without hesitation. "No," she said gently. Emily blinked. "We are not." Linda shook her head. "No, we're not." She placed her hand over Emily's. "We just live somewhere. No one else can see." And that was the truth. Weeks turned into months. The outside world moved on. People forgot. Stories faded. But beneath it all, hidden from judgment, hidden from cruelty, a life continued. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Linda stood one day near the entrance of the tunnel, looking out at the faint light beyond. She could go back. Maybe. Try again. Face the same world that had once turned its back on her. Or she could stay. Here, in the place she had built with her own hands. Where every inch held meaning. Where every breath felt earned. Emily stepped beside her, slipping her hand into Linda's. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Linda looked down at her, then back at the light. And then, quietly, she turned away from it. "I think," she said softly, "we already found what we needed. Because sometimes, home isn't a place you return to. It's a place you build. When the world gives you nothing." And Linda Carver, the woman they thought would disappear, the woman they believed had lost everything, she didn't vanish. She didn't break. She didn't beg for a second chance. She created one. In the dark, in the silence, in a place no one expected. And somehow, that made her stronger than anyone who had ever doubted her. Life can push you to the very edge, to a place where it feels like everything is gone. But sometimes, that's exactly where something new begins. Linda Carver lost her home, her place in the world, and the life she once knew. Yet in the darkness where most people would give up, she chose to rebuild. Not perfectly, not easily, but powerfully. Her story proves one simple truth. When you lose everything, you also gain the freedom to create a life that no one can take from you.